Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of our Health Talk. This is Adeline Sede Kamga, the founder and the CEO of FABAFRIQ magazine and FABAFRIQ Media Group. Today we're going to be talking about breaking the cycle of generational trauma. When you hear of trauma, what is it that you think of? I remember a few years ago when I was about to have my second baby, the nurse told me I have inherited a little legacy from my father that was diabetes. And I was kind of surprised because she called it a legacy. I was thinking, this cannot be right. Why would she call it that? And then it dawned on me that certain things can pass from generation to generation to generation. But today we're talking about trauma. We're talking about something that we can't really place our fingers, on it because we might not know how it started, where it started. We think about something like an heirloom, we think about inheritance, we think about interesting thing like a secret family recipe, something that can be passed on from generation to generation to generation. And all we want our forefathers or all would have loved them to pass on to us were these nice things. But unfortunately, life is not always, as it should be. There are certain things in life that happens, malgré tout, like we say in French. It happens whether we like it or not. And generational inheritance is one of these. Now, we're talking about breaking the generation, the cycle of generational trauma. Have we got control over this? Is this something that we can actually do? Is this something that is within our reach? Is it something that we can just take and then we broke it into two? Is it as simple as it sounds? It might be, it might not be, but today at All Mercy, we are going to be speaking to experts in the field. We're going to be talking to people who have spent most of their professional life talking about the trauma, talking about how, talking about why, talking about how we can actually break it. So we've brought these people, these top leaders today on this platform because we do understand that it is important for us to source out the best and to bring them out so that you can listen to them and you can make your own judgments. I want to start by thanking All Mercy, or Mercy Ngeusang, the founder of All Mercy Psychiatry and Integrated Practice. She's based in Texas in the USA. And I want to read her bio because sometimes you might think that you do know someone, but it is always good to know exactly in what capacity they'll be speaking to you. So I want to read her bio because it is very important that I get it right this time around. Mercy Ngeusang is a board certified psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. She is inspired by the limited awareness and resources in navigating mental health crises in the world as a whole, especially in many third world countries. She dedicates her time to study different symptoms and behaviors to attain an individualistic conclusion of the issues faced by patients. Mercy is a doctor of nursing practice and is based in Texas. She is married and has 3 kids. So I'm going to be introducing her on this platform, but before I do so, I want to talk about our other 2 speakers, and I'm going to read their bio because it is important that you get exactly who they are so you know in what capacity they'll be talking to us today. Uchenna Ibe is a certified trauma, relationship, marriage, and family counselor, an advocate for natural family planning. She is also the founder of Ivy League Collections, an interior design company based in Lagos, Nigeria. Uchenna is dedicated to empowering women through soft skills training and mentoring. She aims to close the gender gap by providing job opportunities for women throughout her company's value chain. She's a member of various professional organizations and has impacted the lives of over 1,600 women. Now, it's not exaggerating. Now she is really an inspirational woman. I can say because she's 𝐂𝐲𝐥 cohort 3 members, and if you know what 𝐂𝐲𝐥 is, then you know that she truly has impacted a lot of women. She's taught them tailored and vocational design skills. She holds an MBA in entrepreneurship from Walden University and has completed various entrepreneurial programs in the UK, in the USA, and of course in Nigeria, where she's based. Now let's move and go all the way to Cameroon, where we'll be talking to or be listening from Dr. TENU Elodie. She's a medical doctor with over 9 years of experience as a consulting physician. She's currently pursuing her residency program in psychiatry at the Faculty of Medicine and Biochemistry Sciences in the University of Yaoundé in Cameroon. In addition to her medical work, she also serves as a part-time lecturer in the biomedical sciences and volunteers with the Pacha Foundation. Now, the Pacha Foundation is a foundation, over my own heart. I love the Pacha Foundation with what they do. But I think this is about the generational trauma and about breaking the cycle. So before I go all talking, I want to listen more today. And I want people to start taking notes down, because as soon as I bring in the speakers, I want to see the questions dropping there in the comment sector. I'm going to start by popping in Dr. Mercy, and she's going to be talking to us about generational trauma. What is it to her? What is it exactly, and how is she handling that? Hello, Dr. Mercy. Come onto my screen. How are you today?
Hello, everyone. As usual, I'm excited. Adeline, I'm so grateful your time that you're putting into all this and making this happen. And also those behind the scenes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Actually, generational trauma. One of my patients, when I asked her last week, now what do you guys talk about in school? She said, I and my friends, Dr. Mercy, we are always talking about generational traumas. I said, what is it to you? She said, something that my mom gave me. I'm anxious because my mother has always been anxious. And I felt like it's something that we should talk about because it can affect everyone, every race, every community, every family. It can affect everyone. Generational trauma is an ancestral or intergenerational trauma, which refers to the psychological, emotional pain, distress, or even physical unresolved issues that are passed down from generation to generation without talking about it. It involves the family, and it has even extended into the community, where we see people go through violence, abuse, and other adverse experience, and it impacts them and carries on with the next generation, where we see repetition of patterns. People experience trauma in their family, and before they know, their next generation is going through the same thing. And this can lead to so many mental health issues. Remember, I'm all about mental health. It can lead to all kinds of mental health issues, especially PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where it is unresolved and not being cared for. So I believe that it is something that everyone should know about, everyone should talk about, and everyone should deep down and see, is it something that I'm being affected by it? I'm being impacted by it? Or is it something that I can teach other people about it? And with me here today, like Adeline said, we have powerful people who are so exposed to this and want to talk about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mercy. Thank you for that brief introduction. Now I'm going to pop on my platform. I'm going to pop Uchenna, who is going to be checking in all the way from Nigeria. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, Uchenna. How are you, and how is Lagos?
Thank you so much for having me. Lagos is nice, wet and rainy if you love the rain. It's a lovely evening here in Lagos. Thank you.
Now we're talking about generational trauma, and we're talking about breaking the cycle. So if you have to describe this, what will it be in your own words, in your own terms?
Yes, generational trauma is, years and years of carrying over issues that are unresolved, and it goes into, as man lives and dies, you pass these behavioral patterns onto your next generation. They sometimes don't know the origin of why this is that way, but they just go ahead and do it. So when I counsel couples, I found out that a lot of, almost 60% of issues in marriage and family are actually generational. It comes from the nurturing of the man and the woman. Now they come as a union and come into that marriage with these different behavioral patterns, and sometimes they don't even know why they do what they do, but mostly it's because of what they have seen and how they were nurtured that has formed them that way. So in this case, you find out that many of them just pass this on, and this is what they're teaching their children, and this is what the children see. So as long as these issues are unresolved, it just continues to be carried over and becomes abusive, and at the same time results to a lot of psychological and mental health issues for families.
Thank you so much, Uchenna. I love the fact that you've talked about unresolved. I think Mercy and I we met and had a little conversation earlier, and we're talking about these things that have not been resolved in our families, and how if we do not talk about them now, it's just going to go on. But let's hear from Dr. Elodie Tianya, and let's see what she has to say, if she has something different. Hello, Elodie. How are you today?
Hi. Good evening. I'm great. Thank you very much. For me, generational trauma actually, it's termed under various names. It's termed under various names, and the term might be strange to us, but I'm sure we should be versed with the term generational curses. That's actually the term that is used in the religious realm. Generational curses. Other terms scientifically, you have intergenerational trauma, you have ancestral trauma, and all the like. Actually, this is about some torture that people carry on. So the earlier said, it's from generation to generation. It's just passed on. Most of the times, actually, is very unconscious. You know, the origin sometimes is not really known, but most of the times is due to a lot of hardship. For example, survivors of war, survivors of some serious catastrophes such as natural disasters, or survivors of slavery, or you realize that maybe there is a pattern of constant anxiety. They're always on the lookout. One never knows, it might start again, and you see it is carried on. And sometimes even the fact that it is not the trauma is not conscious within a generation does not mean that it doesn't exist. Okay, that's just what I could add.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elodie. We've heard from our speakers, and I want us to dive deep into the matter of things. Let's start with you, Uchenna. When we talk about, I know you've mentioned the pattern, Dr. Elodie has mentioned pattern, Dr. Mercy has mentioned pattern. Please tell me, we talk about the pattern. What are some of the pattern that the cycle that we have observed, or that you can tell us you've observed in your place of work?
Mostly you have repetitive patterns which come into play when people constantly believe, there's already a preconceived notion in the mind of this person who's behaving in a certain way. I use this example, like in marriage, a man who grew up with seeing his father constantly abuse his mother, and then his father tells him that's how to treat women. That's how you keep them quiet. They talk too much. He doesn't know any better. So you see this repetitive pattern from parenting. So this is like a parental nurturing of the person. You also see people who can't ask for anything without telling lies. Even when it's given to them, they will still lie. Why? Because this is their safety net. So you see that deference to a place where they consider safe. Even when you have, it's become so ingrained in them that even when you offer everything, it's difficult to break out of it. This is another, it's like a behavioral pattern. Then you have the nurturing pattern, which I had mentioned about the way people were raised. Then you have the social, economic, environmental issues surrounding a person and what they are used to. It's like when you set someone free, someone who has been enslaved for a long time, they find it difficult to become a master. Or like we see in the US, in the UK, some parts of the UK, and in Canada. Recently, there was this issue about Indian natives who were taken and put into a camp, and they were being trained and that's like denying them completely of their indigenous culture and all of that. So somebody who has been totally detached from their culture, you know, finds it difficult to settle and know that this is where I belong. So such people are constantly traumatized, and that pattern continues with their children. So they don't belong here, they don't know where they're coming from, they don't belong here or there. So that kind of pattern is like an unsettling mind, where we also saw it's also very evident in the US, as in the case of the Black Americans and how they are being treated in the US, as in the case of George Floyd, when that happened, and how the system, up to today, the whole system just quietened it. So there's also a pattern that comes up from displacement, either from wars or from when governments say we're resettling you. You know, those people are very prone to grabbing, stealing, because they never know when the next meal or the next help is going to come. So these patterns bring out in individuals very on, you know, sometimes you begin to wonder, why do they behave the way they do? You know, but they are doing this because they are already surrounded in all these cycles and patterns, which they, in most cases, takes a while for them to break out of it. Yes, truly.
Thank you so much, Uchenna. Thank you. Very good input. Now, I'm a little bit lost with remember when we're doing our briefing, I told you people, you need to speak to us as if we're lay people. We're lay people. You people are the experts. You people are the people who speak to these people every day. So you would know some things that we would not know. I want to ask you a question, Dr. Mercy. I know Uchenna has mentioned somebody who grows up in an environment where the dad is always beating the mom, and this child can also grow up to beat the wife and or beat the kids. So where is the trauma here, and how is this generational? Because if you ask me, I would say the person who is the beater or the person who is the giver is not the person who is receiving. How are they traumatized? So psychologically, I mean, Dr. Mercy, please explain how that works to me, because I'm lost here.
Yeah,
You need
example. That can you hear me now? That's a clear example that you have this transgenerational transfer. You do things without understanding them, but you do them anyway. Because your father used to beat your mother, you just copy that when I get married and if I disagree with my spouse, I will do the same thing without even understanding. There is a clear example of it was fun, a funny illustration. I'm always cooking. Let me use this example. A girl was asked during Thanksgiving, why does she cook turkey and always cut off the legs? She said, oh, because that's what I saw my mom did. When they asked the mom said, that's what I saw my own mom did. When they asked her own mom, she said, that's what I saw my mom did. So this leads us to the great grandmother. When she was asked, she said, oh, because my pot was too small and I had to cut off the legs. But you see, even though this girl had a big pot or a big roasting dish for the turkey, she still cut it off because that's what has been passed down. Transgenerational transfer. It may be a kind of trauma that it is just passed down, and parents may unintentionally reignite those same patterns towards their children. Now, sometimes, especially if it is abuse and neglect, you can see these children developing emotional dysregulation. They are anxious because they don't know when the next beating will come. Sometimes they don't feel free to talk about their feelings because they are always being shut down. This is a clear case of tribes or cultures that do not allow the girl to speak up. They grow with a lot of it inside of them and they cannot speak it out. They are so anxious, they become depressed. They don't even know how to deal with PTSD. And not only that, the parents who are copying this, it becomes some challenge as well as they parent their own children because they have not dealt with their own struggles and they are in the middle of parenting this new generation without knowing what is right or what is wrong or how far they can limit what they have copied from the previous generation. And this brings up a lot of stress in my job, I see that a lot. It brings a lot of chronic stress, which is associated with generational trauma from the past, because you can even go to maladaptive behaviors to deal with those. Because you saw your father or your uncle drinking, smoking to quiet down what was going on, instead of talking about it, instead of sharing it, you develop those same habits, substance abuse, avoidance, or destructive ways of doing things. And in mental health, which is what I do every day, you see that it is higher. It's so much higher, especially PTSD is higher amongst those patients who has witnessed or who are still going through generational trauma. I have also seen dysfunctional relationships. Sometimes they don't talk about what happened in that family. You have uncles, fathers sexually abusing the others, and it carry out. These children grow up, they don't know how to express themselves. They don't even know how to contribute to their family dynamics. They don't even know how to communicate problems. They don't know how to communicate conflicts. Before you know, it brings a strained relationship among family members. So these dysfunctional relationships, we have seen it where either they are estranged, people can go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years without talking to each other, or they develop some kind of codependency where they cannot live or function appropriately without the other. It also brings about a lot of low self-esteem, especially those who were traumatized and have not handled it or have not learned to speak about it. They kind of internalize these negative feelings, which is associated with the trauma. And of course, this will lead to low self-esteem, self-doubt, a sense of worthlessness, a sense of not belonging, because that's how you were trained to grow up. The patterns become so repetitive. And how does it affect your mental health? Is where we come in, that we need to talk about it nonstop.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy. Thank you. I think that was very explicit and you really explained it to me. Now I know. I popped this question on the screen because I think Gideon made a very good point, because I asked a question about the father is the one that beats, and the son grows up to beat, or the daughter grows up to beat, and you see the whole thing happening. And this question says, I believe any child who grows up to beat a lady or a man in the other way didn't really love the receiver at the time. So that means if you love your mom, why would you beat your wife? I mean, this is a psychological concept that I really cannot understand. I think throughout the course of this conversation, we might be able to address that. But let me come to you, Dr. Elodie. I want you to tell me about what we need to do to break this cycle of generational trauma from your own perspective. If you've seen this before in your job, what are some of the things that you can advise that we do?
First of all, in order to break a cycle, you should first of all be conscious that there is a problem. Because as the earlier said, the issues of generational trauma are most of the times unconscious. So when you get to the consciousness that this is a problem, then now you seek the solution. And the solution often comes with family therapy. And when we talk about family therapy, it's mainly talking about the problematic and making a conscious effort to reverse the cycle. Because when you are not even conscious that this is a problem, like the issue of domestic violence, I bet you there are some tribes, even there's a tribe here in Cameroon, the family believe that if a man doesn't beat his wife, he doesn't love her. And so you realize that even if a woman gets married to a man, a woman from that tribe gets married to a man, and he's calm, he's understanding, no matter the problems they have, he doesn't even attempts to raise a hand on her. Sometimes she even looks for trouble, hoping that he will beat her. And when she doesn't see that, you find her feeling that, no, this man doesn't love me. And when they say, no, but he does this, yes, she will say, yes, those are signs of love, but he doesn't love me enough, because she hasn't gotten that aspect that she has grown to believe it is a sign of true love. That one comes back to the worry about how comes the man who saw the father beating turns to beat the mother. He has grown to know that you love, you beat. That's actually it. He has grown to know that you love, you beat. And even for us, a lot of us Africans, I personally, I have grown to know that this particular verse of the Bible, spare the rod and spoil the child. Oh God, that's a sing song. And personally, till now, I firmly believe that you don't beat a child, then you don't love that child. Because I was groomed with serious beating. And whoever is senior to you, be it your elder sister, your mother, your auntie, your uncle, you do anything wrong, they crack. Sometimes you just even make a slip of the tongue, and they have already cracked your head. So that is something that you grow with, and unless you get to the consciousness that this is a problem, it will be difficult for you to actually acknowledge and look for solutions to stop it. And when you acknowledge that this is a problem, now in terms of seeking solution, we have spoken about family therapy, that is talking about it, talking frankly about it, because we know that in a lot of our cultures, one of the signs that shows that we have a lot of the generational trauma is that you don't talk about feelings in families. There's nothing like feelings. You talk about feelings means you're weak, of which it is is about the feelings. Trauma is about the feelings. I can slap you and you feel loved, and I slap the other person and he feels deep pain. Those are two different things, two different perceptions, and it all boils down to feelings. And you see, we don't talk about feelings. In family therapy, each person is supposed to talk clearly, open-heartedly, how he or she feels about this thing. And not only talking, now every other member of the family is called to consider that feeling. Consider it. And now we see how we can do to move ahead. It's a long, it's a long work. It's demanding, but it's possible. And you see, when we leave from family therapy, automatically you realize that the society will get a lot better. Because when we talk about generational trauma, it's not just family. You see, even the society itself, we realize that, let's look at an example in society. More and more in our streets, we have people who insult each other, who quarrel at every step, whatever. It looks like each person is carrying a burden, and as you get out of the way, as soon as you have an opportunity, you just throw a piece of that burden to the next person, and it becomes so normal. You realize that somebody just steps on your toes, or somebody is even just passing and you just insult him, and it just seems so normal,
so natural. It seems so natural. Thank you so much, Dr. Elodie. I think we're gonna come back to the role that the community and the family plays, in all this. I think we have one of the questions down there, and I'm happy you brought up this point at an earlier part of this conversation. Dr. Mercy, as a founder of All Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care, I know that you must have been faced with some circumstances where you have to deal with mental health issues that stem from generational traumatic issues. So what role do you think, an institution like all Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care can play to help curb, some of these issues?
Dr. Elodie, thank you so much. And Adeline, thank you for that question. As Dr. Elodie said, being aware, we cannot fix something that we don't know that is wrong. Being aware of the problem is one step. Acknowledging the fact that there is a problem in the family or in the community, learn about it, see the systemic pattern that has been going on, and contribute it to why you're feeling or going or behaving or going through what you're going through. It can be a very complex issue. For example, a patient will come and tell us about something in their family. Medication sometimes is not the solution to that. They may be having some effects or impacts from what they are going through from the generational trauma that medications may help with the anxiety and the depression, but the core is still there. Let us deep down to the analysis, to the root of the matter. And sometimes it involves that we bring the family or some few people in the community together. Now, we cannot do that without the patient's consent. So this is where it becomes more complex. It may be a family thing regarding the parents, and until they give us an okay, or sometimes willing to come for therapy as a family, so that we can provide them the much needed education. Sometimes we have healed family just from doing this. The patient does not even realize that what she is experiencing is what the parents are also experiencing and have just been masking it. But how far can you mask something? To what extent can you mask something? One day it will just explode. Or you may be thinking you're masking it. So what we do therapy and counseling. We promote self-healing and self-care. Seek professional help, yes, but also encourage self-care practices that makes you in a place that you are able to promote your emotional wellness, where you're not just traumatized. And sometimes those family dynamics, we cannot change them. But if you're still part of that family, we have to make sure that your emotional wellness comes. We promote self-care activities. We also have support networks for them. They have groups that people who can connect with each other through some kinds of emotional trauma, through families, peer-to-peer, community. We have all those groups that they do. Above all, we encourage them to break the silence. Share it in a space that you feel comfortable, a space that you don't feel judged, a space that you can say it all and it feels like a load has lifted off your head, off your mind. For parents, we also teach them positive parenting practices. It's not because you were brought up this way that you have to do this. Now, sometimes the hardest part is to change the culture that may be traumatizing. You can see spiritual practices, cultural rituals that has been embedded in that culture for a very long time. Now, who are you to come today? Something that has existed 6 generations to say, oh no, I am traumatized by this practicing. I am traumatized by what we are practicing in the family. I will not, it takes a lot of complex ways to get there. So except people want to accept that there may be another way around to deal with this, then it can be fixed. It can go to the extent that we can even seek justice and advocacy, because we all know that some practices are just not okay. Like Dr. Elodie said, if you are beating your spouse because you think that is a way to show love, if you come to places like the United States and you want to show love that way, then justice will be way against you, because that is not allowed. And then this lady can seek advocates so that they don't go to the point where they just stay in that traumatizing environment. Another thing, we encourage our patients set boundaries. Some people grow up not knowing how to say no. It's all about how you want to please the next person, because that has been the norm in your culture. Set healthy boundaries for yourself. Don't say no to yourself and say yes to others when you mean to say yes to yourself. Set healthy boundaries so that you cannot be re-traumatized by what you're already going through. And I would say seek professional help. And there's education that will go through generations for future generations as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy. I love the fact that you've just mentioned the education at this particular point, because I was just about to ask you, Uchenna, I know that you do work with the community, and apart from working with the community, I know that you are a fantastic, fine interior design, everything that has to do with, you wear so many hats. I was just looking at some of your pictures, the beautiful work of art that you do. And I was thinking, how can one woman do this on one side, which is the glamour and the beautiful work of art, and on the other side, she is speaking to people, talking to people, listening and advising them on trauma, marriage counseling. Tell me, Uchenna, how do you use your platform to raise awareness within your community? And what are some of the issues that you've had with regards to talking to people and getting them to understand that things like generational trauma do exist and it is okay for them to seek professional help? And why would they trust you?
I would say, when the first thing in talking to people is to gain their trust. And you can only gain their trust by being a role model, trying to live an exemplary life, practice what you preach, and also show a lot of love and empathy. Here in Nigeria, especially in Lagos, I've had the privilege, and Abuja also, the FCT, I've had the privilege of mentoring a lot of young men and women, young businesses, because I teach entrepreneurship as well. So in this space, you see a lot of people who are already coming from a disadvantaged aspect of life, because maybe they didn't grow up in a buoyant family and they feel they are fighting against those who already have a platform or better education. And I tell them that you have to keep improving yourself, especially women. When I was young, my grandmother told me, she was very wise. She told me that women are like onions. And on the outer layers, you have it scaly and rough. And these are challenges and preconceived social norms and perceptions about women that have to be broken. And as you continue to unpeel the onion, you'll see layers. And these are strengths and gifts that God has already deposited in us. And we're afraid to tap into it and develop ourselves more. So the first thing I tell you is that you're more than what you see. You're more than what you believe. You're more than what you think. Don't limit yourself. Live consciously a life that doesn't limit you, because every one of us is multi-talented and multi-gifted. So if you begin to add and dig deeper into yourself, you discover that you're capable. Things I was doing earlier on, things I found out I did in my 30s, in my 40s, I found out that in my 50s, I'm doing even more than I did back then. So it's all about showing empathy, educating them, and also teaching people how to cope. Because when we talk about trauma and overcoming trauma, we're actually talking about stress management. Because many of us just go through life without addressing the stress that they feel. And when this begins to boil up and expand, then it becomes traumatic. But when you tell people, okay, if you put your hand in fire, it's going to hurt you. So they have an idea. So I find myself kind of preempting situations that are unpleasant, explaining to people. Like I tell young people in church when I'm teaching pre-marriage classes, I tell them, you cannot go into marriage with secrets. As much as possible. Some of them say, oh, I've had 3 abortions. How can I tell my husband that I've had 3 abortions? I said, if you had 3 abortions because that was in your past and you're not having any more abortions, you're safer going into that marriage, living the truth, than him being in that marriage with you and finding out that it was all a lie. So if we psycho-educate people, and then also we teach them stress management techniques, and like Dr. Mercy said, practicing mindfulness, self-care, self-love, positive words of affirmation. Even if you have made mistakes in the past, you can do better, you can change. There is always room for growth, for transformation, and that is what you see in an onion. As you continue to unpeel the layers in an onion, you begin to discover the fresher, more flavored and spicy intensity that lies within it. So I encourage people to discover themselves and to try out the different facets of who they are. Don't ever think because I'm Dr. Mercy, that's all I'm going to be. Dr. Mercy can actually be a musician or any other thing. So self-discovery will always help stress management and overcoming trauma.
Wow, thank you so much. I love when you're talking about onion, I just keep thinking about, I just kept thinking about the effects that onion has on me, which is eye-watering, kept thinking about eye-watering, and I kept thinking about, they say the more your eyes water, the more it becomes cleaner, So I will also link, yes, you can see better. So I will also link that to the more you unpeel the onion, the more you get brighter eyes, cleaner eyes, you see better, you appreciate better, you love better. So thank you so much for that onion analogy. Let's come to you a little bit. I know this question is, is designed for, it's asked to you, Dr. Mercy, but Dr. Elodie, tell me, in a local community without healthcare facilities and advising, some men seem as though it were disrespect. What can one do when cases like these are seen? Dr. Mercy. Now, local community, it's about the trauma. I think the question is, I wouldn't know exactly, but I think it is when Dr. Mercy was talking about, support that they give in the local community and things like that. So in the local community where we don't have people to solve, or to advise people on generational trauma and anything that is traumatic, what can we do about it, especially when you want to talk to some men and they think that no, it's just you being disrespectful to talk to them about their actions and how they behave. So any of you can pick on that question, to be honest, except Gideon would like to repeat the question, make it a little bit better while we go on to the next question, which is more about the practical tools, that individuals can use to overcome effects of generational trauma. And that I will ask you, Dr. Elodie, again.
Can I go back to the question, because I understand the question, and that's a problem that we often face in public health, especially when we are bringing a solution. A really serious challenge. As said, it takes a lot of courage and humility to first of all accept that you have a lot of courage and humility. That is the most difficult thing. And sometimes you wouldn't get it at the first try. In fact, most of the times you wouldn't get it at the first try. The first reaction is often a protective reaction, reaction of protective of what you have always had, and we always hide behind consolidating our traditions, and that word tradition is often used as kind of a pacifier. Once they put it that is the tradition, it looks like, who are you? Okay, and as if it's not enough, especially if you're not of the community and you come from out there, like, oh, you want to come and impose on us those your things. It takes a lot of patience and humility to be able, first of all, to acknowledge that there is a problem. And usually it's good to expect that kind of resistance when you want to talk, especially about something which is encroached into the society, like this generational traumatic and when sometimes it's not easy to talk directly, but sometimes when you come to bringing out the link between the person that you're talking to, his own feelings and the victim's feelings, sometimes when you get to that link, they understand. Or you talk about, you bring out a story, you bring out a reality, or you ask a question concerning that person. Okay, for example, talking practically, if you have to talk to a man, try to advise a man who comes from a society where it is believed that beating women is normal, okay? And you ask him, okay, this is your daughter that you're giving birth to. When did you last beat her? No, 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 I never laid hand on my daughter. Or the last time I trashed her was at 3 years. Now she's a big girl. I say, okay, how will you feel if you see somebody beating her? Say, no, that's outrageous. Then how come you feel so good beating another person's daughter? So those are the kind of links that you can make, or even at the making relationship with a person's job and a person's expectations. It's usually not easy. Okay, so it takes some patience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elodie. I think you've really painted a typical African community where men always feel they are beyond, they are above the law. They always feel that they have a right to do whatever they want to do. I mean, it is true that some women too, behave in a certain ways, but we see this a lot more in men. So this will bring me to you, Dr. Mercy. Tell me about some of the I'm aware that Uchenna, you will need to leave in a bit, so I'm gonna come to you in just a minute. But I'd like Dr. Mercy to tell us some of the practical tools and technique that we can use, practical tools and technique that individuals can use to overcome effects of generational trauma. Because sometimes we don't know, we don't. So
Yeah, thank you. I want to just throw a little bit more light on Gideon's question. In a space where there are no mental health resources, how do we educate men who beat their wives, for example, without them feeling disrespected? Like Dr. Elodie says, sometimes they get very, I think the first reaction is even defensive. They become very defensive, like, what did I do wrong? Another thing is, why are you in my business like that? If I beat my wife, what happens? It's our private matter. It doesn't concern you. I think if we get to that space of boundary setting again, or of validating someone else's feelings, if that is how you show love, please listen to your wife if that is how she wants to be shown love. Validate her feelings. If she's telling you you're hurting her, then it means you're hurting her. Don't misinterpret any other thing she's saying. Just listen to what she's telling you. If she tells you, I don't like the way you are treating me, then take it as that. Validate her feeling. Listen to her. Be empathetic as well. Put yourself in her shoe. So if for nothing, there is no resources like education or anything, then just listen to who you love, saying, this is not how I want to be shown love. Now, the tools, practical tools that we use, therapy and counseling, we've talked about that. Mindfulness and meditation, we've talked about that. We also advise or encourage patients, journal. Sometimes just take it off your head and put it on paper. Many people have felt so much relief when they journal. You're journaling your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences relating to the trauma. You're writing them down. It's a powerful tool for self-reflection. When you look at what you've written down, it's like you took it here and put it here. A weight is already off your head. Then if you can visualize it, then you can admit that there's a problem and you start looking for means to solve that problem. Education is one. Self-care is another one. Creating a space of expression is another one. Boundary setting, like Uchenna said, positive self-affirmation. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming that we just say, breathe, breathe, and use small methods each day to sensitize and educate your culture, because the cultural one is hard to break. But bit by bit, you guys can sensitize your culture and say, this is wrong, especially if you have evidence-based practice. This is wrong. This is the right way of doing things. Forgive yourself. That's a big healing tool. Forgive yourself. Or even if it's parents who have inflicted some trauma on their kids, you can ask for forgiveness. If it is a kid, forgive yourself for going through that. Even if nobody forgives you, ask you for forgiveness. Forgive yourself and give yourself permission to be whole again. To say, okay, my generation, the past generation affected me with this. Now let me take control over my life. You can seek trauma-informed care. Not all therapists can give trauma help. You can seek trauma-informed care. You can set some goals, some realistic goals. By this time to this time, this is what I will do to change what is affecting me. This is what I will do to educate. Professional support is real. And remember, it is a gradual process. It is an exposure. Sometimes medication has helped with everything that you're going through. If you cannot function with just therapy, medication can help. But we want to see the change. We want to see how has it impacted you and how are you going from there to the new you that you want to be without blaming your generation. It is very insightful. It is an experience that it can be so individualized and personalized. Some of us are just so blessed that instead of inheriting traumas, we have inherited blessings. There are many things today that I say, oh, thanks to my grandmother, thanks to my mother. So we have inherited a lot of blessings as well. But we also have to realize that not everybody has inherited blessings. A lot of trauma is going on. People are seeking help, not for things that they caused, but for things that was embedded in the tradition or in the community or in the families that they grew up in, and they have not learned to seek help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy. Your points has brought this question that I want to ask you. But before I do that, I would like to ask Uchenna a question, because I know that she should be leaving soon. I would like to ask her a question with regards to if Uchenna, I know you are in a different community, and I know that Dr. Mercy has pointed some facts about how it works in the US and also maybe in Cameroon. Now in Nigeria, where you live, what are some of the practical tools that you've used in the past that you think it work? And if you can add advice that you can give to people struggling, with the effect of generational trauma today, and I think we'll be able to release you. But I don't want to release you until you've answered this question for me.
Youth in resilience building exercises. So when it comes to this, you find an escape. When you have a problem, you find a solution. But also what we neglect is to also add an escape. There must always be a safety net. And in my line of interior design, I ask people to always make their houses, it doesn't take money, it just takes a little bit of putting together. Make your environment pleasant. Use subtle colors. Try and be neat. When you're neat, it's popularly said that cleanliness is next to godliness. So when you come into a place that is calm, cool colors like soft beige, light ash, soft blue, everywhere is just calm and neat, it's definitely going to influence your mood. And then secondly, I ask people to always find creative and meaningful escape through music, through dance, through art, through the outdoors, even gardening, planting. Even if you're not planting flowers, you can plant cash crops and small vegetables around your home. And it gives you pleasure to actually see that you're nurturing. You're actually nurturing the environment. Yes, pepper, things like that. Then I also ask people to volunteer a lot. When you volunteer and somebody comes up to you and says thank you, it gives you this very deep and warm feeling. You can't buy it. You just can't buy it. When you're in a position to help somebody who otherwise would not be able to help themselves, sometimes you think you don't have money and you can easily give somebody, a family, something like 10,000 naira. That's in naira. You give a family 10,000 naira, and the woman can just buy plantain and go out right outside her door, and she's roasting. You're feeding a family. Little acts of kindness go a long way. And then what it helps the individual who's traumatized, what it helps you do is begin to feel a level of confidence, increase your self-worth and value. And when you volunteer freely as well, a lot of people will bring positive words and blessings towards you. And then you begin to see yourself in a different light, from a place of accomplishment, a place of being needed. Because most people suffer trauma and they feel because there's a stigma around them or there is something around their family, they don't feel that they matter. But when you volunteer, like in America, I know they advise people to join the Red Cross and all those kind of things. Here in Nigeria as well, even in the local churches, you can volunteer. If you like children, go to the children's church. In your community, if you like to keep the place clean, join the environmental community where you live. In Nigeria, there's so many, there's help. Help is needed everywhere. So I know that when people volunteer, you develop your self-value and worth, and then also you set goals. Sometimes you feel nothing is happening in your life because all around you are challenges. But I beg to differ. I tell people to discover themselves, keep on peeling the onion, and see what other things that interest you. Anything that interests you, take it to the limit, take it to the summit. Anything that interests you, if you like medicine, read it and become a professor of something, something. If you like music, if you can go professional, go. If you can go volunteer. If you like singing, you can even go to an old people's home on a Saturday afternoon and say, I just want to sing and dance with them. 20 minutes and you get into your car. By the time you keep exploring and sharing love, you'll find out that most of your own pains dims away because you're bringing light and you become a source of light and a source of joy to other people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uchenna. I feel that we live in a community and in a society where things are almost the same. It doesn't matter where you are. She's talked about volunteerism. She's talked about gardening. She's talked about just going somewhere and singing to people who do not have. Talk about giving the little that you have. And I feel that these are some of the things that we do wherever we are. We can do it in the UK, in the USA, in Cameroon, in Nigeria. The fact that these are some of the natural recipes or natural remedy that you don't have to pay for is really and is truly important. So if you are listening, maybe she might not be coming back, maybe she might be coming back. But while we are continuing with this program, I want you all guys to, first of all, I want to thank you for joining us. And I want you all to log on Facebook and follow all Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care. You know, you need to follow these because we are hosting these sessions every month. Next month, we're going to be coming up with another session for generational trauma. Now we're going to be looking at this from a different perspective altogether. So if you've enjoyed this conversation today, please do follow all Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care on Facebook and on LinkedIn so that you will never miss an update. While we are at that, Dr. Elodie, tell me, what advice would you give individuals who are struggling with the effects of generational trauma? I know this is in relation to the question that you were answering at the top. That question was about how families and friends can help to break the cycle, how they can support you. So how do you usually advise people with regards to this?
Individually, it's tough but possible because it starts with the person. As Dr. Mercy earlier said, the person needs to request for help. And when you request for help, then as professionals, we can then invite your family in, and the family therapy will actually be a professional guided therapy, because it will not it will be a different sort of family meeting. In family meetings, is he who pays the piper that determines the tune. But actually, in family therapy, there is what we call the index patient, because that's a term that is coined from you realizing that there is a problem with the patient, and you now have to address it from the family perspective. Because as we earlier on said, as Dr. Mercy earlier on said, one of the consequences of generational trauma is PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. You also have, like, I remember, can I just share a little experience with you? We had a patient. She was brought in by her family for suicidal attempt. She had actually poured kerosene on her and set fire. That's actually what prompted them to bring the lady to the hospital for psychiatric attention. Now, when we get into the history, we realize that this was a teenager. I think she was 17 or 18, if I'm not mistaken, and very bright girl of the Bororo community. And typically, the Bororo community, traditionally, the girls are given in marriage early. Formerly, your husband was even chosen by your parents, and now they have adjusted it a little. You can choose your husband. Some families that kind of modernize, you are allowed to choose your husband, but they always struggle for you to get married early. Now this girl, she's bright. She's a community leader because she was a leader in her mosque, of the youth group in her mosque. And now she had a number of suitors which she had rejected, and the last suitor that she was considering and the family was already accepting, she came to realize a number of months before their wedding that this man had been divorced. She did not know, and apparently the wife had left. The previous wife had left because of domestic violence. Now she decided now to reject this other suitor, and it was a problem. Her mother was not d'accord. For her, it was a shame in the community. My daughter is already this old. She's not yet married. I remember she also said that because of the suitor issues, they had stopped her from going to school. They had sent her to learn a trade instead. But now she's trying to say, no, I don't want to marry this man, but there's a lot of pressure from the family. And so because of that conflict, she didn't know how to go about. She couldn't express herself again. She had a number of suicidal attempts. She had tried to drink medications and did not succeed. They had taken her to the Malam, saying that she was possessed. They had taken her to a health center because she had gastric pains from the numerous medications she had ingested, and probably from the stress. All that to no avail, and finally she tried to set herself ablaze. That's when she was brought to us. And so we realized that that is a complication of generational trauma. And I remember at that time when we were receiving this patient, a colleague of mine who is of the Mbororo community too, she told me this is just the tip of the iceberg. We are receiving this because she survived. A lot of girls actually successfully commit suicide. So just to say that now, it starts with you. it starts with one person. And when it starts with you, you should make a decision not to perpetrate. That is why we should also be able to modify our parenting styles. Because if yes, this girl had been some sort of emancipated, she was a youth leader, she was able to do things, she was able to speak. Her father really loved her very much, but he could do nothing against the community pressure. So he was getting at her, he wasn't protecting her as much as she needed. So our parenting styles also need to be modified, because when you realize that there is a problem, you should make a conscious effort not to pass it on. Another way of avoiding passing it on is breaking off the cycle. For example, if you realize, no, being in this community, staying here will make me continue living and perpetrating, you can relocate. As Dr. Uchenna earlier said, uh, volunteering, it helps you, all those things she said, it helps you boost up your morale, meet other people, see how they are coping with the differences in culture. Because as long as you remain in that same environment, you will always feel like there is something wrong with me not being like them. And as long as you feel that, you will always have the tendency of, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Sometimes, if you cannot beat them from inside, retreat. Retreat. Take yourself out, relocate, and so you can have a better view, you can interact better, and you can help with a better idea. Now, if you have another thing too, is identifying a number of people who are in the same situation, and together seeing how you people can how you people can modify it at the societal level. Another issue is the treatment of widows in our communities. If we realize very well, the things that we complain about, oh, widows are treated this way, that way, most of those things are perpetrated by widows. They will say, I went through that, that is how it is tradition. And when you as an individual, try to uh, talk up, they'll say, who are you? That's why sometimes, as an individual, when you realize that, because it's usually difficult as an individual who is broken to fight a tendency, so you need help, you need assistance, people who can
Wow.
help. Mercy earlier said you can also seek for the help of justice, and all that is true advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elodie. I mean, it has been very enriching listening to you, and your knowledge in the subject matter is truly it has left me with a bit of a notion to go and research a bit more. But while you were speaking, I was thinking about one of the edition of FABAFRIQ magazine that we covered I think last year. This was on female genital mutilation. And when you were talking about the Mbororo community, I was just thinking about some of the stories that I captured during my interview with the young girls in that community, and also the older women. Because when we worked on it was a project for the United Nations, and we were working on female genital mutilation, and you know how it is. So it is a very, very traumatic act, that has happened. And this has been happening for generation to generation to generation. I'm sure by now, most people do not even know why they are being sliced open, why they are being sliced in the name of tradition, or in the name of my grandma did this, had the same, so it's okay. So I'm very happy you shared that experience with us, and I think we should, Dr. Mace, I think we should all teach our our sons and our daughters some of the things that they need to know. They need to know some of these things, and they need to know how to approach and how to address it. Thank you so much for giving your advice on this. But before we wrap up and before I say bye to everybody, Dr. Mercy, I would like you to tell us at 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐬𝐴 Psychiatric and Integrative Care, what are some of the I don't want to say success rate, but could you just give us a little bit of insight, into some of the ways you've been able to, as as a practice, some of the way you've been able to manage this situation in a way that your patient they've actually gone away and maybe come back to you, recommend, or just something that has shown that what you've been doing for them has truly impacted them, helped them to change, helped them to heal, and just share a word of advice before we wrap up and say bye to our followers and our listeners. You will need to unmic yourself first.
Thank you so much for that question, Dr. Elodie. Thank you for bringing out that experience. At that point, I will say we can even, you see how we talked about advocacy, we can even advocate not just at a cultural competency level, but also at a policy change level where we break down these inequalities and these discriminative practices that keep going on, especially if we have evidence-based practice that this is wrong and this is right. It will be a gradual process, but I think, like Dr. Elodie said, what are we doing? We are fighting against something and we are committing those same things. Because I am a widow, I went through this, now I'm going to make you go through this, even though it is traumatizing for me and knowing that it will be traumatizing to you. Why am I inflicting the same thing? So it's not just a cultural thing, we have to take it to a policy advocacy level. And Adeline, thank you so much. What is All Mercy doing? That is making me think a lot. The fact that I tell my patients, if I can heal one person, if I can stabilize one person, then I have stabilized part of a community. And we have seen the successes with the growing of the practice. And most of our growth has come through inpatient referrals. One patient will go and refer another patient, and before you know, the whole family and the whole community is coming. So what are we doing? We are having those community partnerships where we collaborate with community organizations like NAMI and other religious institutions and local community leaders, where we can comprehensively build that network of a change for our children, for the community as a whole, for the society as a whole. And I know that one day we'll take it to the national level where we advocate for more changes and more changes. When those partnerships are created, we do different things. Like Uchenna was saying, a lot of words is being said in the work of arts or in the work of what you believe in. We talked about gardening earlier. That is my safe space for me. That for me, that is my safe space. Sometimes my husband will laugh at me, but that is my safe space. Sometimes the work of art, cultural event, just go there as a group and see what each of you can draw from that. It releases the tension, it releases the anxiety, it releases the depression. It gives you an outlet where you can communicate. We have also seen that most of these artists, the best ones, they are communicating their feelings, and that's already a healing journey for them. They may draw some abstract thing that you don't even know about. What is it representing? But that's what they are feeling inside. And they can take it out and put it in a piece of paper. So we encourage all that from different talents that we see, and we encourage them. But as if that is not all, we also tell them healing is not one person. When it's generational, sometimes we want to do multi-generational healing. Grab the next person. And it's not just families. It may be in a community, suffering from inequality, suffering from war, suffering from discrimination, or this part of the community has always been like that. Let's grab one or two leaders and together we see how we can change. Who can hear our voices? one day at a time. It is a gradual process, but cultural sensitivity is a key. We can reach out for help. If we don't have a therapist at that time, we always refer, find someone appropriate. But if you don't ask for help, how do we help? We help you build that support network. We have peer-to-peer network that we sit and talk about self-compassion and how do we change. We teach you to express your feelings. Don't hold it inside. Talk about it. Educate yourself. We also know that it's physical trauma as well. Find yourself a safe space from emotional and physical abuse. So love yourself too much to know that you matter. And from there, you can make a change, not just in your life, but a change in another person's life. Thank you.
I truly feel like clapping, Dr. Mercy. Thank you so much for this beautiful wrap up of our session. If you are just joining us, or if you are picking us at the tail of our conversation today, we've been talking about breaking the cycle of generational trauma. It is all Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care hosting this show. I'm just a host. Mercy is actually Dr. Mercy. Let me call her Dr. Mercy because normally behind the scenes I call her Mercy. Dr. Mercy is actually the brain behind this conversation that we are hosting every month. Join us next month for another edition of Generational Trauma. This time around, we were thinking about the next session of our conversation, and we thought, Mercy and I thought that this is not a topic that we can trash in 1 hour. No, this is a topic that has a lot that has to go into it. So at the end of October, I think the 28th of October, same time, we're going to 27, 20.
26.
On the 26th of October, we'll be coming with another topic on generational trauma. This time around, we're going to have a different dynamics of speakers, guest speakers, quality guest speakers as always, and I hope you're going to join us. So while I'm going to ask Dr. Mercy to close off, I want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the participants. Thank you for Gideon. I have seen Charles. I've seen Nelly. I have seen Lady Diana, I have seen Angel, I have seen, in fact, there are so many people. I've seen Oliver, I've seen Carrie, Yaya Mel, Sonia. I can't just start. Veronica, I just cannot list everybody who's joined us today. But please do make sure people know that they have to follow all Mercy Psychiatric and Integrative Care on Facebook. They need to follow them on LinkedIn as well. And of course, they need to join this conversation. If there is any topic out there which you would like us to talk about that has to do with mental health, please bring it on. We're ready. So Dr. Mercy, I'm going to let you wrap up, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to host you and the other brainy practitioners on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pascaline. Thank you, Pascaline. I can't go without saying thank you.
Adeline, I'm always so grateful with you and your FABAFRIQ team, whatever. Sometimes I just see All Mercy, like, is this All Mercy? Yes, FABAFRIQ has made some magic happen. So thank you so much with all the support and all the help. It doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you so much. Thank you all the speakers, Uchenna, Dr. Elodie. Thank you guys so much. It was just a short notice and you guys jumped in. We appreciate your time and thank you so much. All the viewers who are at work and still texting, my phone is going off. Some of them don't have Facebook, but they are commenting on my phones. I see all that. Thank you. We'll respond to them. We'll respond to them later. I believe that All Mercy always bring things that will raise awareness and foster a culture of openness, empathy, support, and building a community where you are being heard, an environment where seeking help is a continuous thing. It's a normal thing. Let us normalize the process of seeking help and not making people feel like it is weak or wrong to seek help. We will continue bring topics to talk about. We are not just educating you guys, we are learning as well, and everything you say is taken into consideration. And if you have more topics that you have for us to talk about, please feel free to let us know. Thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you as always.
Thank you all. Bye now. We're going to end the live. Bye.